All right, so here I am re-recording a video that I did yesterday, but turns out it's funny how shit can just get outdated really quick because I woke up this morning planning to upload a video about dreaming crazy about LeBron James possibly joining the Sixers. And then I wake up this morning and see clips of Bob Myers on Rich Paul and Max Kellerman's podcast Game Over. And so I'm like, oh shit. Okay. I guess it's time to re-record this and include that new information because I did mention the whiteboard from the previous episode and stuff like that. And I honestly haven't watched an episode of this podcast because, quite frankly, a lot of the content that I see coming from it is just so uninteresting, especially for a podcast that has the most powerful agent in the NBA, arguably, hosting it. I just see so much uninteresting stuff. Just takes and opinions and stuff that normal people like me, for example, do. And not like any insight or agent insight or insight into agent-player relationships that are not politically correct. And so I just never bothered to tap in. And then I watched the 8-minute segment of Rich Paul with the whiteboard, and that was the first compelling piece of content, and not just because he was talking about the benefits of LeBron joining my team, obviously, but it really was interesting seeing LeBron's agent. I don't know if it was good, bad, or just weird, but LeBron's agent just taking the pointer and pointing it to the whiteboard like he was an old school late 90s, early 2000s college professor. And then Bob Myers, who is basically Josh Harris's right-hand man for the Blitzer company or whatever that owns 3 different sports teams, joins the podcast. And I decided to watch the full 90 minutes. And most of it was pretty uncompelling still, which is amazing. But there were interesting tidbits in there, and Bob Myers did make a pitch to LeBron James, basically, as to why he should join the Philadelphia 76ers. And so I just figured I would record this after I watched this episode. Some of the interesting tidbits I did find was, one, obviously, the talk about Joel Embiid and his health this offseason, and what I've talked about before, how this is probably his first healthy offseason in 4 summers, basically, especially since the Jonathan Kuminga falling on his knee thing that happened in the 23-24 season. And there were some interesting things about what Bob values, which honestly was covered a little bit when he did that press conference with Josh Harris after Daryl Morey's firing. But the appearance on the podcast just makes this feel a little bit more real. I think it's very clear, one, after seeing these past 2 podcasts or clips from the previous podcast and then watching this whole 90-minute podcast where Rich Paul really didn't say anything and downplayed his involvement in LeBron's decision-making. But it definitely sounds like Rich Paul wants LeBron to go to Philadelphia, and it is very much, obviously, the ultimate decision is up to LeBron James, whether he wants to go to Cleveland, Miami, or Philadelphia, which coincidentally yesterday Shams Charania was on Stephen A's podcast and said that those were the final 3 teams. He was on NBA Today earlier this afternoon and also added the Timberwolves, and I forgot the 5th team. But the 3 teams that are in their own tier is Philly, Cleveland, and Miami. Me as a Sixer fan, and I'm sure a lot of Sixer fans feel this way, we haven't been able to dream big like this in a minute. We've had multiple points this past season where there was definitely some joy, some things to take out of that we really liked, like VJ Edgecomb's development, Tyrese Maxey's first half season leap, beating Boston, coming back down from 3-1. But then, obviously, getting obliterated by the Knicks and getting swept, you kind of came back down to reality. It was like, oh, now we're kind of back to knowing our place in terms of purgatory with 2 contracts that are tied to players that don't really play and are on a minutes restriction and all that. Then the Jaylen Brown trade happens, and now we can just dream big again. And boy, it would be so fun if LeBron James joined the Philadelphia 76ers. I know there are certain podcasts I listen to where the host, Spike Eskin, will say shit like they don't want LeBron to join the 76ers. I think that's fucking insane and fucking madness. LeBron joining this Sixers team would definitely put them squarely in title contention, because his signing, especially if it's for the vet minimum, which there are reports, especially from Shams Charania, who I will definitely take at face value because, one, he is the preeminent NBA insider, but he is also represented by Clutch, which is the agency LeBron is also a part of, said that he would take the minimum, or he'd be willing to take the minimum to play for a contender. And the reason, I think, at least, there are some basketball fits that I like outside of Philly, just objectively speaking. I think Denver would be fun because Jokic and LeBron are just super geniuses. I think Minnesota on the court would be fun. Off the court would be very interesting. But Philadelphia just presents an interesting blend of youth, an interesting blend of LeBron having a big man that could transition to be more of a play finisher now at this point in his career in Joel Embiid, because LeBron can feed him easy buckets in the spots that Embiid wants to operate in. But LeBron just solves, or not solves, but I should say he addresses multiple needs that the Sixers have to fix and have had problems with over the last few years in one fell swoop. He addresses a need at the power forward spot, and you can move Dean Wade to the bench. And we'll talk about the free agency signings later. I think I already addressed it a little bit in my Jaylen Brown video, but LeBron automatically becomes the starter at the 4. The Sixers desperately need above-average playmaking, and LeBron definitely brings that to the table. He's one of the smartest players ever. Has definitely played point guard, point forward, whatever you need him to do, he'll do it. He addresses rebounding. He addresses transition play. Now, he doesn't play in transition as much at this point in his career, but he could still thrive in it. And he's just somebody that could take the load off of Maxey. VJ Edgecombe will be able to slot in pretty easily. I think people are underestimating VJ's scalability and role scalability. If you're looking for somebody to recreate that Embiid-Harden pick and roll to where Embiid was more catching the ball in his spots and then just rising and shooting, I think LeBron brings that. I think LeBron will find Jaylen Brown on cuts. That's going to be the question. What is Jaylen Brown going to do when he doesn't have the ball? But I think his off-ball stuff, whether it's the willingness to do it, I think it's getting underrated because Jaylen Brown can cut. Jaylen Brown, I think, will have higher numbers in terms of catch and shoots because he's playing with a bunch of other players that can just get to the chicken, so to speak, on their own and draw a bunch of defenders in. But LeBron also addresses the lack of championship experience factor aside from Jaylen Brown. And he just slides in so perfectly. And boy, would it be fun to be a true contender once again for the first time in forever with Joel Embiid on the team. I think the only two teams that I considered to have a chance to make the finals and maybe win the championship was the 2020-21 team and the 22-23 team. Not the 2019 team. Notice how I didn't mention that because we were really like 5 players deep. And Mike Scott was the half player coming off the bench, and Greg Monroe was the backup center. And we all know how that went in Game 7 against the Raptors. LeBron just addresses so many things and puts everything into place. And I'm just dreaming of the online blitz that would happen if the Sixers made the conference finals, but let alone win the championship. And the stacks upon stacks upon stacks that go to the ceiling that I have of anti-Embiid receipts, and pulling those out would just be so glorious. Now I'm just really dreaming and tripping right now. And now the stacks and stacks and stacks of dumbass Jaylen Brown takes and how the Sixers lost this trade because they traded for Jaylen Brown and the Celtics actually won this trade and blah, 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 blah. Even though I do think the Celtics will be a really good regular season team still, it would just be so glorious to see people who have shat on the Sixers, shat on Embiid, even fans within the fan base, because I have been of the opinion that I'm not trading Embiid, especially because it'll cost a fuck ton of draft picks to get off those contracts. I had always taken the position of we have no choice but to run it back because in the second apron era, draft picks are a premium. Cost-controlled young players are a premium, and I am not willing to use draft picks to get off Paul George and Joel Embiid's contract. Little did I know that an all-NBA level player was going to be available when trading for Paul George. So, of course, I'm fine using a couple of draft picks. One of them still most likely going to be a swap in 2028. So you're still going to end up with a 2028 first-round pick more than likely. There is one scenario where the Celtics could actually outright gain the pick without any swappage, but there's 3 other scenarios where you're definitely swapping with the Celtics. And then the 2031 unprotected first-round pick. I'm willing to pay that price to salary dump Paul George if that means you're getting Jaylen fucking Brown on your team. So unless somebody brings a trade like that to the table when it comes to talking about getting off Embiid's contract, me personally, I'm not trying to hear it. But now this has gotten so much more fun. And I feel like this is more real than what it was in 2018 when that offseason was the most pivotal in the franchise's history. But this just feels more real. It feels like the Sixers have an actual chance at LeBron James. And I've seen people say, oh, he's using the Sixers for leverage. And someone has to explain to me exactly what type of leverage LeBron is using here. Because at this point, Cleveland could offer the most money out of the 3 teams when it comes to Miami and Philadelphia. And if he was going to choose the Cavs, he probably would have done it already. There really is no benefit to LeBron, quote-unquote, using the Sixers, and I really don't see how he is using the Sixers to get more leverage. What leverage is he trying to pull out? What other stuff could he possibly squeeze out of Miami and the Cavs? Especially when all reports indicate, and Rich Paul also didn't deny this, but that's kind of a big non-denial, that LeBron's willing to take a giant pay cut or play for the minimum to play on a good team. I think LeBron is seriously taking the Sixers into consideration. Whether he chooses the Sixers or not is a different story, of course. I feel like it's past emotional scars talking because in 2018, the Sixers got a quote-unquote meeting with LeBron, but it was really with his reps and not LeBron himself. Also, I didn't buy in 2018 that he was coming to the Sixers. Everybody and their mother knew he was going to the Lakers. It was just a foregone conclusion, and he was dragging it out. LeBron is dragging this out, but he's not using the Sixers for any type of leverage to squeeze anything extra out of Miami or Cleveland. I think it's pretty straightforward. He has a bunch of teams he's considering, and the Sixers are in the upper echelon in terms of tiers of teams he is considering. And I think it's real. And it's exciting. And it should be exciting because just a week and a half ago, I was resigned to, okay, hopefully we can sign Dean Wade and make moves on the margins, and then we're probably going to run it back, and we're going to wait out Paul George and Joel Embiid's contracts. I really don't know what moves the Sixers can make. Now, all of a sudden, that's not the case. And that's so fucking exciting. And the Jaylen Brown move just makes all the other free agency signings that we have done so far just that more awesome. Like Dean Wade's going to be a nice complimentary player to this roster. Anthony Simons, I know people are going to say, oh, well, there's only one ball. He's a scorer. No, he is a quick release, catch and shoot 3-point demon that's going to get all the catch and shoots in the world. LeBaron Philon's going to be an awesome rookie. Like you're looking at the roster, there is still some depth we need to fill out. And if we don't get LeBron, I do hope that the Sixers can land at least one more wing and hopefully of the younger variety the former lottery pick type like Zaire Williams or Ochai Abachi. Maybe Matisse Thybulle if that three-point shooting is real. Jonas Valanciunas just got waived by the Nuggets, and I don't know what the fuck the Nuggets are doing. But I am enjoying it because I don't like Nuggets fans whatsoever. I do love watching Jokic, and I do love watching Jamal Murray play in that two-man game. But I am cackling at Nuggets fans as they watch their team just disintegrate into the abyss. But Jonas Valanciunas would be a good backup center signing, could also spot start as well. That would be pretty cool, but it seems like he will most likely go back overseas. What a time. What a time. This is fucking exciting. And it would be sick if LeBron was a Sixer, obviously. But even if we don't get LeBron, this has been a blast and an A+ offseason from the Sixers.